Okay, so I have finished making my letters. Now, some tips I'd like to bring to your attention are a little bit of recycling, for for lack of a better word. What I did to make sure that all of my letters felt as if they were unified. You'll notice that I have the selection tool selected, and I click and drag over one of my letters. I do group that by going to Object and Group, which is Command G. But I oftentimes will copy and paste it, Command C, Command G, and I will use it to build my other letters. Now you'll notice the E is not nearly as wide as the B, but when I made it really wide, or the R, when I made it wider, it just felt off balance. So most of my letters, though, like the R and the B, they are just about equally wide. Oh, nope, that one's got a little extra square in there, so I should fix that. So we're looking for consistency. The R and the C are not as wide as one another because it seemed too wide, but the R and the A are as wide as each other, so it looks like I need to fix this B. So I do a comparison from one letter to the next to make sure that I'm being consistent. Now I do need to fix that B. It does seem a little too wide. Let me just make sure that's the case. Let me group all of this together. Object, Group, and make sure that I'm actually off on this B. And yes, I'm a little too wide, so I need to move everything over a little bit. I should practice what I preach and fix my stuff. So I'll fix that here shortly. But here I've completed my first name and my last name in all caps. And each letter is different. In other words, I just didn't copy and paste the E and then use it for the B and add elements. I changed things up so it wouldn't feel like you see the same pattern over again. So we don't want to see the same pattern in these horizontal or vertical strokes, so you want to mix it up. Now, one thing I did too is I did my my first and last name in lowercase, which actually I prefer. The uppercase is a little harder to read, and that's a nice lesson to learn because in general, uppercase, things set in all uppercase take longer to read. Everything, as you can see here, is kind of built within the same square. It just feels like there's not a whole lot of visual difference. But as soon as you start adding something lowercase with ascenders and descenders, these are ascenders and descenders fall below, there just is a lot more difference in the letters. So lowercase is actually easier to read and people can read it quicker than uppercase. So I think when I combine these two, upper and lowercase, it'll be pretty interesting. But I do have these done. I have to do two of these. I have to choose another style that I created in my sketches. Let me minimize that. So that's just one. I'll turn these off for just a second. I would also explore another one of these to develop into drafts. So don't just do one typeface, you're going to be doing two typefaces. So I chose this one to start out with as my demonstration. Now, since I'm the instructor and I do demonstrations, I oftentimes don't fully complete the entire project. I just show enough so that I hope you get it. So you guys do more than one typeface design. I'm just showing one for demonstration purposes. Now, when we're ready to get these into show everybody, and I do again need to fix this B as drafts, what you want to do is try to make sure that we're not overcrowding the page. If you're overcrowding the page, you can take this entire group of letters and you can scale them down a little bit. Just keep in mind that they will no longer be working with this grid structure. So if I double click on the scale tool, I can take this down, let's say 85%. I'll hit OK, and you'll see that this flows better within this layout. I'm going to go to View, I'm going to hide the grid, and then we can see it for what it's supposed to be. Now you'll notice that I drew some boxes over some shapes, and when it's zoomed out, those can tend to show up. But as long as you had Snap to Grid on, it's just kind of funny because depending on how zoomed in or out you are, you might see little hairlines. It's usually best to draw them individually though, especially if you want a color to come through there. But so this kind of thing is a little distracting, but it shouldn't print. Now before I had zoomed in or out, or even after, I might want to group these as one word. So I go to Object and Group, and I'm going to grab these and go to Object and Group. So that way if I go to move one or the other, they are moved together. Now, what I would like to do for drafts is I want to center this within the page. So there's an alignment panel. Here's the align button, and here's the align panel. And here in the align panel, you don't want it to align to selection. You want to align to the artboard. So choose the artboard, and you can center align. Oops, that. Of course, you don't want to line all the objects together. So let's undo that. It should have done it. Oh, it's not grouped. That's why. Let's group that, and then select it as one unit. Go to the align panel, and we want to align to the artboard, and we want to align center. There we go. So it is actually centered to the artboard. This I'm going to make sure is grouped. Again, choose it, tell it to align to the artboard and align centered, and then we can optically adjust. I'm just using the arrow keys. And this is slightly above center. That's actually a good idea because we live in a world of gravity, and optical center is better than mathematical center. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to group these, which is Object Group or Command G, and I will center those to the artboard. Again, my last name, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to group it, and I'm going to center it to the artboard. And I may pull that up a little bit too. Now, I might go ahead and create a third artboard. Let me save this. And my third artboard, I might go ahead and mix my upper and lower case together. So how do we create a third artboard? We go to the artboard panel, which I think I closed it. It's not here anymore. So let me go to Window, go to Artboards. There we go. I'm going to create another new artboard. There we go. It's Artboard 3. I can close that now. And I can copy and paste. Let me zoom out. I'm going to copy and paste my name. It's already grouped, so if I go to copy and paste it, it's going to grab the whole thing, which is fine. I'll just put it up here. Same thing with this. And if you alt drag, it's the same thing as copy and paste. And I'm going to grab these two and alt drag them. So that's copy and paste. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually ungroup each of these. Now here's the bad thing, is I had resized those letters, so those aren't going to be in proportion to the rest, so I may have to size those back by turning on the show grid and making sure snap to grid is selected, and I am going to have to resize these. Gosh darn, I wish I would have thought about that beforehand. So I want to snap them to the grid, and then I don't even know what size to make them now. I guess I could make sure I'll compare them to my lowercase, because I do know that my vertical strokes use 6 squares, and I can enlarge this to the point where I have 6 squares. So again, I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and I click and drag on the corner node, and when it appears as if I have 6 squares here aligned to these 6 squares aligned to those, then I can stop, but they're not done yet. Kind of jumped the gun on this decreasing their size. Should have copied and pasted them beforehand. Oops. So I've got the scale tool, and I am going to scale this some more. And it might fuss with me a little bit because of the grid. And I'm almost there, but not quite. Gosh, I really wish I would have thought about this. Again, this should be doing it in proportion. It shouldn't be scaling either horizontal or vertical. It should be doing both. Okay, I'm almost there. It's kind of tough because I'm on the grid. I wonder if I can just go over here to the other edge and just resize this so it is snapped right to that grid. Hopefully it'll begin and end at a good grid point. And let's see if I got it. No! Ugh! So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit Command Z many times because I made a mistake. And I hate to do that, but I am going to. So I'm resizing. There we go. And I don't want you to do the same thing. So I better copy and paste this into a new artboard before I decide to do my resizing. So again, I'm going to go to artboards. And I just hit Command Z till I went back, and on a PC that's Control Z, till I got back to the point where I decreased that size. So I'm going to go to the artboards, and I'm going to create another new artboard. And now I can grab all of this, copy it, and paste it, which is just Option or Alt drag. Same thing with my lowercase. Option or Alt drag. It's Option on a Mac and Alt on a PC. On a Mac, usually there's a little Alt, the word Alt next to it. Okay, so back to what I did before, which was grab the Rebecca, group it, and center it. Align to the artboard and center it. Same thing with this. Last name. I'm going to group it, make sure it's aligned to the artboard and center it. Maybe bring it up a bit. And now I can grab both of them and scale them maybe 85%. Okay. And make sure they are both still aligned, centered to the artboard. And same thing with this. Group my first name in the lowercase and center it to the artboard, and grab the last name, group it. Again, making sure you're aligning to artboard centered, and I think I'll move that up. There we go. Now I'm ready to doctor up this one. Now I will have to ungroup if I haven't already. I only need, actually it's not grouped, so I can delete all of the letters except for my R and my B, because that's for my first and last name. These should snap to the grid just fine because I didn't increase their size. I'm also going to delete my lowercase r and my lowercase b. And I'm ready to put these in position. Now it doesn't matter that these are low. I am going to move them in a second. So this R is grouped. And it looks like I'm only putting about, oops, I'm going to zoom in here. Looks like I'm putting 2 grid spaces between each letter. So there's 2 here, 2 there, and oops, I gotta change that one. That one has 3, so does that. So I want to get things into position. You don't want sloppy digital craft. By the way, if you want to move around the artboard and you don't want to change tools, hold down the space bar and the little hand will come up, and you can click and drag and move around the artboard. Okay, here we go. Now I'm going to move this B. Oops, better. Looks like it's not grouped. See how I click on an object? Make sure you don't move anything when you click on it. And then I'm going to, if you double click on something too, it's pretty cool because it goes into this editing mode in just that grouped object. But double click on the artboard, it goes back to normal. So I'm going to group these, hit Command 0 or Control 0 on a PC, that'll zoom out. And I'm going to make sure that this one is set 2 grid points apart. Then I am going to group each one of these names. So I'm going to Object and Group. Same thing here, and what it's doing is going to put this red letter, the binding box, onto the same layer. Right now these are 2 different layers, but as soon as I group them, it'll all be on the layer that happens to be the green. Now I probably should have created a whole other layer for my first and last, but it's no big deal. So what I'm doing now is I'm putting this in position, and I want to align the center to the artboard, both of them. There we go. Now I'm going to turn the grid lines off. Oops, I definitely want Snap to Grid on. I'm going to hide the grid. And now I have my name, uppercase, which again is very hard to read, lowercase, easier to read, and then a combination of upper and lowercase. And I would like to do maybe a little bit of spacing in between my B and I and L, it does seem like it needs to be a little wider. So I'm going to ungroup. So it's all about optical spacing. Mathematical spacing is great. Oops, I need to group each of these letters individually. But if it doesn't look right optically, then we have to make adjustments. So I'm going to move, like I had before, each of these objects so they are about 3 spaces from one another. This has such strong vertical presence between these letters that I have to do this. Now I'm going to fix this because it's not snapping to the grid. There we go. When I centered it to the artboard, it automatically centers it with, and does not keep in mind the grid. So I'm looking at this. Let me turn off my grid, and with those a little bit wider apart, that looks a little bit better. That's actually known as kerning. Kerning is the fine-tune adjustment of spaces between letter pairs. I could possibly move this R over to, let me ungroup it, move it over 1, turn my grid on, make sure things were actually lined to the grid before I did that, and they're not quite, so I need to zoom out and grab the other guys and then snap them to that grid. And here I have 4 segments between. I only wanted 3 for that. And we'll see if that looks too wide. It looks alright. Another thing I might choose to do is I might choose to do something like this, where I adjust the baseline of my lowercase, and I want to do that not only on the first name but also the last name, and count how many times I moved up. It looks like 2 there. Make sure 1, 2, yes, and that looks kind of good too. It tightens things up a little bit. I think when I did that, I might now be able to afford to move that back over 1. So now I'm going to group each of these names again, and then I'm going to center the group name again to the artboard. Now it ignores the grid at this point, so you'll notice that things may not align perfectly to the grid. They just are aligning perfectly to the page. Now I'm going to go to View, Hide Grid, and you can see that how clunky the uppercase looks altogether, how well the lowercase reads, and then a combination of upper and lowercase where I moved the baseline of the lowercase up just a little bit just for a visual balance. So this would be my first draft of one of my typefaces. I would now save this, and then I would, let me see if I can save it as a JPEG. I might have to export it. Yeah, it doesn't have the JPEG option, and we're going to post JPEGs. So you want to go to File and Export, and you want to choose the JPEG option. Okay, first draft set 1 JPEG, and I'm going to use artboards. Maybe it'll make 3 JPEGs for me. Let's find out. I'm going to hit Export. Color mode, I'm not, it really doesn't matter, but RGB will make it smaller. I want the file to be a good quality, and I just think I'll just hit OK. And it's writing my JPEG right now. Now, JPEGs post better than PDFs. For some reason, when we post PDFs, they don't oftentimes view properly, but JPEGs always view nicely. Now, I'm going to minimize this, which is this little button right here. It's going to park it down on my dock. And let me see here. Oh, nice. It gave me a JPEG of my uppercase, my upper and lowercase, and just my lowercase. And what I want to do is I want to name those. So the first one was uppercase, so I'm going to say, let's say set 1 uppercase. And then my second one was, let's do this one. This was the one we wanted lowercase. So I'm going to actually have this one called lowercase. And then the last one, which should be upper and lowercase, we, instead of having to spell that out, we do U and LC. But we usually use an ampersand there. I don't know if we can do that and have it be a legal character. U and LC, that stands for upper and lowercase. Okay, it took it. So these are the ones I'm going to post in Blackboard. They're my set 1, lowercase, uppercase, and upper and lowercase combined. I need to have set 2 with a different typeface design. So I'm going to go ahead and create a folder here. Call it first drafts, and I'm going to put those into that folder, including my Adobe Illustrator file, so that way when I go to look for them, it'll be a quick way to find them. Now, I will continue in showing you how to post this. I know sometimes posting can be a little difficult, or you post things that are too large, so I want to do a little video on how to post these. Okay, thank you, and I'll see you real soon.